other than Letitia James. You all remember Letitia James, right? I'm sure. I'm sure that you do. She was indicted as it relates to mortgage fraud and false statements made to obtain a lower rate.
None of
Come
it's true.
on, none of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
Well, according to different sources, and as always, I implore you to conduct your own thorough, meticulous research. Always cross reference. But let's look at this first little slide. This was the response as it relates to the Justice Department. According to this source, immediately respond to a request for comment in relation to the decline of another attempt to indict Letitia James. This case already has been a stain, a blur, a mark on this department's reputation and raises troubling questions about its integrity. Well, let me not go there. James's lawyer, Abby Lowell, said in a statement, any further attempt to revive these discredited charges would be a mockery of our system of justice. Well, Abby or Ab, Lowell or Lowell, I think you're a little bit short on that if you want to talk about mockery of our justice system, but that's for another broadcast. And another, which is the headline. The Justice Department failed. Could not complete. Lost. Again, to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James on Thursday, which was yesterday, December the 11th, 2025. The second time in as many weeks as it has sought to revive a mortgage fraud case against her amid President Donald Trump's pressure. That's an important and keyword, pressure, to prosecute his political adversaries. Now, how many of you in the chat, or those who may catch the replay, believe that President Donald Trump does go after his ops, if you will, political ops? A grand jury in Alexandria, Virginia, which is right across the bridge, minutes away from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, rejected. They said, Federal prosecutors' latest attempts to charge Letitia James, according to a person familiar with the proceedings. Granted, basically, they didn't want to reveal who they are. That's kind of concerning, but it's out. So, without further delay, let's listen to a couple of clips. You ready? Let's go.
We have some major news right now. For the second time in a week, the Trump Department of Justice failed to indict Letitia James. Another grand jury, a second grand jury, rejected criminal charges against Letitia James. I can't even make this up if I tried. According to Catherine Faulders at ABC News, who reported this first, A grand jury in Alexandria, Virginia, rejected the indictment against Letitia James for mortgage fraud. Letitia James is obviously the attorney general for New York. Let me put this into perspective for you. It is said that prosecutors can indict a ham sandwich because of how easy it is to secure an indictment. Now, not only has one grand jury rejected in Norfolk, a second grand jury in Alexandria, a completely different part of the state, rejected charges against Letitia James. 2 grand juries, 2 failed indictments. Stunning. Spread the word. Full updates on my Substack, linked in bio. Subscribe for free. Follow along for all the news you need to know about. More to come soon.
And we'll get another perspective.
Declining to re-indict New York Attorney General Letitia James. The charges against her in a mortgage fraud case were thrown out just 10 days ago. The Justice Department tried to bring the case again earlier today. It said that you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Well, apparently the Trump people can't do that.
Guys, I just know Donald Trump is so fucking mad, especially about Letitia James, because you know that he's perceiving this as a win for Letitia James, and he hates when his opponents win. And it is just so fucking funny to watch. And then James Comey's case was even tossed out. So you know he's double pissed because now they can't even go after Comey again because of the statutes and limits, and they've run out on his charge. So now they're stuck because they declined to re-indict Letitia James and they can't go after Comey. So now they're going to try their next step, maybe go after another Democrat or I don't, who knows what. But one thing I do know is Donald Trump is pissed today.
None of it's true.
None of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
So again, your thoughts on this breaking news as it relates to Letitia James. Do you believe she is actually absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, your honest opinions, that she's guilty and that the court has erred in their decisions not to go after her yet another time? Your thoughts and opinions as we listen to the next video. And let me put our president up real quick. I'm just imagining. I know when I have a rough day, that's the type of face that I have, and I'm imagining that at some point during the week, he may have had that type of face. So let's listen to our next clip.
Well, we got some breaking news we want to get to. A grand jury has decided once again not to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James on allegations she engaged in mortgage fraud. Let's bring in MS Now senior investigative reporter Carol Leonnig. Carol, this is the third time. It is not a charm.
Yeah, it is not a charm, Katie. This is the third time the Justice Department, at the direction of the President of the United States, has tried to indict Letitia James, one of his perceived enemies, the person who accused him successfully of a serial effort to defraud banks and lenders. This is the third time that Department of Justice leadership has tried to indict James, and now the second time it has failed. The first time they were able to indict James when Lindsay Halligan came into office sometime after September 20th. I think it was November 4th. That indictment was dismissed on the argument that Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney installed by Donald Trump, had never been legally appointed to that job and did not have the authority to prosecute anyone. That office has kind of ignored that judicial decision that Halligan is inappropriately appointed to that job. She remains in that position, and now a third time an attempt to indict Letitia James has failed.
So, your thoughts thus far on that? Again, to review. The Justice Department failed again to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James on Thursday, the second time in as many weeks as it sought, to resurrect a mortgage fraud case against her amid President Donald Trump's pressure to prosecute his political adversaries. A grand jury in Alexandria, Virginia, rejected federal prosecutors' latest attempt to charge Letitia James, according to a person familiar with the proceedings. So there was a question as to one of the content creators over in TikTok if Letitia James can go after them. Let's listen to what she has to say and your opinions on this next clip. Again, welcome to the late night edition of Messy Week MAGA. And I'm your hostess, Lise. Glad to see you here.
Can Letitia James sue the government now that her criminal case has been dismissed? Let's talk about the law. I had a lot of people in my comments saying that Letitia James should sue the federal government because of the malicious prosecution. And that is an option. It's not an easy thing to do, but let me break down what she would have to prove in order to successfully bring such a claim. First, she would have to show that there was a dismissal in her favor. We know that her case was dismissed. Now, the court is going to look at why the case was dismissed. Here, it had nothing to do with the merits of the case. It was dismissed because the U.S. attorney was illegally appointed. That may not work in her favor because usually the court wants to know that.
We have some major news right now for this.
Declining.
Can Letitia James sue the government now that her criminal case has been dismissed? Let's talk about the law. I had a lot of people in my comments saying that Letitia James should sue the federal government because of the malicious prosecution. And that is an option. It's not an easy thing to do, but let me break down what she would have to prove in order to successfully bring such a claim. First, she would have to show that there was a dismissal in her favor. We know that her case was dismissed. Now, the court is going to look at why the case was dismissed. Here, it had nothing to do with the merits of the case. It was dismissed because the U.S. attorney was illegally appointed. That may not work in her favor because usually the court wants to know that this case was dismissed on the merits. Next, she would have to show that there was no probable cause for bringing a claim against her. Usually, this is one of the biggest hurdles in these types of cases, but there are some things about what happened to Letitia James that would definitely work in her favor. Number one, we know that the career prosecutors did not want to bring this claim against her because they didn't think there was enough evidence. And we also know that we now have 2 grand juries who have refused to indict her. And if that continues, that would be very much in her favor, that the government cannot get an indictment from subsequent grand juries, because the grand jury's role is to determine if there is in fact probable cause. First, she would have to prove that the prosecution was brought with malice. Now, this may be an easier one for her, because you know what Exhibit 1 is going to be? This is Exhibit 1. This is Donald Trump's own words about wanting her prosecuted. And this shows that she was not being prosecuted because of justice. She is being prosecuted because of politics, because of retaliation. And his words are going to be powerful evidence about why the claims were brought against her. And finally, she will also have to show that she suffered damages. And this should not be difficult. We know that she's had to pay legal fees. She has suffered reputational harm, possibly. And she's probably suffered some type of emotional distress as a result of this. So let me know in the comments how much she should seek in damages. Those are the 4 things she would have to show. I think she should definitely pursue this claim against the government, and I am volunteering to represent Letitia James in this claim. You all let me know what you think in the comments.
Okay, that was an actual lawyer. And your thoughts and opinions on her statements, and would it be difficult for Letitia James to prove those elements, especially those that require those tough elements as far as damages to her reputation, even though this has been going on for a while. Again, your thoughts and opinions as to, number 1, if you believe Letitia James may in turn sue the government, and if you believe that she will, what do you think her chances, or do you believe she has a chance to be successful in any suits she may decide to file? Next up, let me cue this clip. This case right here is huge. Again, I feel as though I'm part of history because I was there. And actually, as I mentioned and showed on my live last night, where I had the opportunity to speak to this gentleman's attorney. So the next big story, and again, through the lens, through the optics of many, was a substantial loss by the Trump administration, was not only the order, but the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. This case, which is now a precedent, and that was the question that I asked the attorney, and he was so kind to answer me, stems back, at least as it relates to this broadcast, to March, where he was illegally deported. Now, there are a lot of people that are going to poo-poo on this, and I'm ready for it. They're saying, many people say, well, he was here illegally. You have to go back to 2019 and make sure you have all of the facts. There are a lot of allegations. But when it came to the court, nobody could bring that evidence to convince the Honorable Judge Paula Lazinas. So let's listen to the first clip.
Mi nombre es Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
I stand before you as a free man, and I want you to remember me this way, with my head held up high. Regardless of this administration I believe this is a country of laws, and I believe that this injustice will come to its end.
Mi nombre es Kilmar Abrego García.
I stand before you as a free man, and I want you to remember me this way, with my head held up high. Regardless of this administration, I believe this is a country of laws, and I believe that this injustice will come to its end.
On Thursday, which was yesterday, as I said, this has been a rough week for the Trump administration. The judge ordered that Kilmar Abrego Garcia be released on Friday, which is today, December the 12th. And a temporary measure to make sure Garcia wasn't detained again. That temporary restraining order was granted. And let's listen to the next clip.
This is arguably one of the biggest developments in the Kilmar Abrego Garcia saga. A federal judge out of Maryland just ordered his immediate release from ICE custody. Now, if you've been following along with this case out of Maryland, I don't know if you're all that surprised. For months, this Maryland judge had asked someone from the Department of Homeland Security to come forward and provide answers as to what the plan is for deporting Abrego Garcia. This is after Abrego Garcia had pled not guilty here in Tennessee and was released on bond pending trial on 2 human smuggling charges. He went back to Maryland and was almost immediately taken into ICE custody. Since then, this Maryland judge has said that the Trump administration has never provided evidence of a removal order for Abrego Garcia. She wrote in her order that when Abrego Garcia was first wrongfully expelled to El Salvador, the court struggled to understand the legal authority for even seizing him in the first place. DHS had sent one person after another to not only argue that they had the legal authority, but also give the name of one African country after another that they said they were willing to send Abrego Garcia. In some of those cases, those African countries wrote back saying they never agreed to accept a man that the U.S. government has already called a dangerous gang member. Abrego Garcia did agree to be deported to the Spanish-speaking country of Costa Rica, which has already said that they're willing to accept him, only to learn that the Trump administration has not even been in contact with Costa Rica. This is why the judge now says that this man has waited long enough. DHS issued a statement calling what happened in Maryland, quote, naked judicial activism by an Obama-appointed judge, saying that they plan to continue fighting this tooth and nail. Now, this doesn't end the legal challenges for Abrego Garcia because he still has to follow the bond conditions they agreed to here in Tennessee, meaning that he has to stay in the custody of his brother in Maryland. He has to wear an electronic monitoring device. His travel is limited to court, work, church, and any doctor's visits. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, we're still waiting on a ruling from a judge as to if these 2 human smuggling charges against Abrego Garcia were, quote, vindictive and should be thrown out. It's not clear what's next for the legal challenges for Abrego Garcia, whether it's here in Tennessee or in Maryland, but at least for now, it looks like he's one step closer to being a free man.
None of it's true.
None of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.
Again, this has been a huge case, and this last clip should pretty much sum up what has happened and the important bombshell that happened today. Again, as the gentleman just said, that this is not over, absolutely. But for right now, this is, again, it can be deemed another loss to the Trump administration. And this is a picture of Kilmar Garcia in an embrace with his wife. So let's listen to this last clip.
The same week, that Trump said this.
I've also announced a permanent pause on third world migration, including from hellholes like Afghanistan, Haiti, Somalia, and many other countries. Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let us have a few. From Denmark, do you mind sending us a few people? Send us some nice people, do you mind? But we always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime.
Is the same week that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, do you remember him? The man that this administration illegally deported to El Salvador. And then when they got caught for illegally deporting him, they said, well, we will never bring him back to the United States of America. He's staying in El Salvador. Well, this administration not only brought him back to the United States, but yesterday he was officially released from ICE custody, officially released from an ICE detention center and reunited with his family. And not just that, but I am waking up to the news that today, December 12th, Dia de la Virgencita de Guadalupe, that a judge, a U.S. judge, has officially barred Immigration and Customs Enforcement from detaining Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It's all enough to give you whiplash. You start the week with the President of the United States of America raving and raging against immigrants of color, the crowd going wild, clapping at his speech, him begging YT people from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden to immigrate to the United States. And then you have one of the most high-profile immigration cases turn against the administration. You have Kilmar Abrego Garcia having a win against this administration. And then you end the week with Denmark declaring the United States of America a security risk. And not just that, but the people of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden sure did have a lot to say on social media about Trump's remarks.
Let's rewind that.
The same week that Trump said this.
I've also announced a permanent pause on third world migration, including from hellholes like Afghanistan, Haiti, Somalia, and many other countries. Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let us have a few. From Denmark, do you mind sending us a few people? Send us some nice people, do you mind? But we always take people from Somalia, places that are a disaster, right? Filthy, dirty, disgusting, ridden with crime.
Is the same week that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, do you remember him? The man that this administration illegally deported to El Salvador. And then when they got caught for illegally deporting him, they said, well, we will never bring him back to the United States of America. He's staying in El Salvador. Well, this administration not only brought him back to the United States, but yesterday he was officially released from ICE custody, officially released from an ICE detention center and reunited with his family. And not just that, but I am waking up to the news that today, December 12th, Dia de la Virgencita de Guadalupe, that a judge, a U.S. judge, has officially barred Immigration and Customs Enforcement from detaining Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It's all enough to give you whiplash. You start the week with the President of the United States of America raving and raging against immigrants of color, the crowd going wild, clapping at his speech, him begging YT people from Denmark, Norway, and Sweden to immigrate to the United States. And then you have one of the most high-profile immigration cases turn against the administration. You have Kilmar Abrego Garcia having a win against this administration. And then you end the week with Denmark declaring the United States of America a security risk. And not just that, but the people of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden sure did have a lot to say on social media about Trump's remarks.
Let's hear from Kilmar Garcia once more time.
Mi nombre es Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
I stand before you as a free man, and I want you to remember me this way, with my head held up high. Regardless of this administration, I believe this is a country of...
The same week that Trump said this,
Mi nombre es Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
I stand before you as a free man, and I want you to remember me this way, with my head held up high. Regardless of this administration, I believe this is a country of laws, and I believe that this injustice will come to its end.
Well, your thoughts on that before we go to the final messy loss, at least again, from the eyes and optics of many. For the Trump administration or MAGA. Let's look at this clip before we go into that next story. Again, a federal judge on Friday, which is today, December the 12th, 2025, issued a temporary restraining order to prohibit immigration officials from detaining Kilmar Abrego Garcia just hours before he was scheduled to appear at an ICE field office in Baltimore, Maryland. His lawyers asked the judge to block authorities from detaining him again, because I'm sure that was the plan, that was the goal. But alas, that too has failed. Again, it's just temporary. It's temporary. The judge says officials cannot re-detain him until the court conducts a hearing on the motion for the temporary restraining order. So this is a fight, but if you believe in your heart of hearts that you are right, and there are many people that believe that he should be deported, and I've seen comments where people have said he and his family, they all should be deported. Again, everyone is entitled to their opinion, but you have to pay attention to how things are done. So that's the latest on this, again, landmark case, as it's definitely going down in the history books of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland resident, not citizen, resident who was illegally or wrongfully deported back to El Salvador back in March. And this was admitted by the government, but they said that he was a dangerous member of MS-13, and then there's some trafficking charges and other issues that he has to work out in the state of Tennessee. So next up, remember that big, beautiful ballroom that so many people have been talking about. Well, looks like a group has come together and filed suit to stop, at least temporarily, any further developments as it relates to the ballroom. Now, the East Wing, they've already had their demolition team, and so I'm not really sure what they can do, but let's look at the first page of the suit. As you can see, it was filed in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia today. The party that is suing is the National Trust for Historic Preservation by the United States. And you see their address there? That's the plaintiff. And you see underneath the defendants, okay, plural. And this is a complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. Basically, they're asking them to stop or halt something until some things are reviewed and cleared. And the very last, well, it's not the very last page, but the next important page is this right here. It was submitted by Gregory Craig of Foley and Hoeg, LLP, K Street, Northwest. And looky, Jack C. Smith. Now, the other pages were just certificates of service that would go to all of the defendants that you see listed underneath the plaintiff. All of that talk about this mega ballroom and then destroying what has been historic. There are some people that believe in change, but again, everybody has their opinions, and I didn't think that was a good thing to do. But I'm not the president either. And keep in mind, there are some issues. There's some serious issues going on, and the next administration, if these things aren't cleared up, this is what they're going to inherit. So let's listen to some clips as it relates to this this developing story. Again, this was just filed today.
So Trump ballroom plans are currently stalled because of disagreements with the architect, James McQuarrie, I believe is his name. So they tore down the East Wing, and they didn't even have a finalized plan for what the ballroom was going to be. And let me explain what I mean by that. currently the guy he hired, James McQuarrie, is a Christian architect. They mostly do work on churches. Trump has made his request about the ballroom, and James is just like, no, what you're asking for is unrealistic. We need to kind of scale this back to make it safe and to make it a realistic project. One of the arguments James has is, if we make this ballroom 90,000 square feet and it's supposed to be an extension of the White House, that's impractical. You don't make extensions bigger than the actual thing you're extending on. So he's like, aesthetically, this doesn't work. And then they're also saying that the way Trump wants it designed is unsafe. You know, you have to consider how the construction looks and where columns are placed and things like that. So now James, who was a part of Trump's first cabinet, is out because they're having a disagreement. And y'all, this just isn't a great way to do something, but you don't usually tear down the structure when you don't have a finalized plan, because you don't really know how much you need to tear down, what you need to tear down, what you need to modify. But at any token, the new people who have been slated to work on this project, allegedly, have done other restoration projects on our government buildings in DC. They've done stuff on the Pentagon, they've done stuff on some of the museums and things. So they have a familiarity with our old structures, our national structures. So, I mean, that's better, but I'm just saying, if we're going to destroy history and rip out a part of the White House, I would hope that we had an actual plan. But just letting y'all know, that's where things stand. Have a good
The National Trust for Historic Preservation filed a lawsuit on December the 12th, which is today, ladies and gentlemen. And again, welcome everyone to Messy Week MAGA, and I'm your hostess, Lise, aimed at blocking the construction of President Donald Trump's new White House ballroom, alleging it is unlawful and asking the court to halt further construction until the plans go through a legally mandated review process. The lawsuit filed in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia names Trump, the National Park Service, and several other administration officials involved in a fast expanding project that already included the demolition of the East Wing and prompted preservationists and, dare I say, Hillary Clinton and Michelle Obama. So I'm going to leave that there for you all to take a look, just in case you think that I'm being disingenuous. I am not at all. So again, you see that for yourself. And again, this is the first page of that complaint and the last one. And you can see that it was indeed filed today, December the 12th. Let's listen to another clip.
The most powerful but demented man in America just got stopped in his tracks by the most meekest government agency in D.C., and Trump is already blowing a gasket. I'm going to break down the details of how yet another government agency is hauling Trump into court to keep him from destroying the country. So hit that subscribe button in order for us to continue to bring you the kind of in-depth coverage that mainstream media just refuses to provide. And could there be a more vivid example of corporate media rolling over than Trump's destruction of the East Wing? And sure, it caught everyone by surprise when Mango Mussolini first sent in the wrecking crews, especially after he said this.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite place. I love it.
But with Trump, every statement is a lie. And so, sure enough, America woke up one October morning to find this happening.
But Democrats are slamming the ballroom's construction amid a 3-week government shutdown and calling for President Trump to...
Well, your thoughts on that?
Donald Trump may not be getting his ballroom after all because of legal battles and pure incompetence. Now first, Donald Trump is being sued by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and they're saying that he does not have authority to unilaterally destroy the White House and put up a ballroom. And they're saying that there needs to be oversight by Congress, that he cannot do this on his own. And for Donald Trump, that could be trouble because legal battles can go on for years between appeals and motions and everything that delays them. On top of that, Donald Trump is now on his second architecture because he had disagreements with the first one. And the biggest problem? He doesn't even have plans yet. He doesn't have a design. He has concepts of a design that are far too big and too grand for the grounds and the property. Donald Trump could leave office without ever once stepping foot in his ballroom. And while it's funny, that means the next president, on top of everything else that he's destroyed, will have this to worry about.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the messy week of MAGA. Now, again, many of these things could possibly change, but at present, this is what we're looking at. The Letitia James rejected re-indictment and the release of Kilmar Garcia, and then the lawsuit filed just today as it relates to this extravagant ballroom. Your thoughts and opinions? Will the Trump administration bounce back in what seems to be a week of defeat? Seems like they always find a way to do that. But again, in my opinion, this was a rough one. So again, your thoughts and opinions on Letitia James, Kilmar Garcia, and the lawsuit that was filed against Donald Trump and others as it relates to the ballroom. And this is the last clip that I'm going to show. Again, this is satire, so don't want anyone to get offended.
None of it's true. None of it's true. None of it's true. It's BS. They made it up. They lie.